is the Celebrity Afterlife Report podcast.
Well, Heidi Ho. Nobody said that in about 70 years, have they? Anyway, hello! It's me, the Celebrity Medium, back with another Celebrity Afterlife Report. Yeah, we haven't done one in a couple of weeks. 4th of July, doing stuff, you know how it goes. We've got some interesting stuff. We've got 2 new arrivals in the afterlife that you'll be interested to hear about. And we've got updates on 2 people we've been following for some time now. I think you'll want to hear about them too. All right, let's get right to it here. Dawn of the Dead director George Romero transitioned to the afterlife over the past couple of days. He was 77. Kind of a legend in the horror movie world among people who love that genre. Dawn of the Dead, and of course the sequels thereof. Made the first movie for, I think it was $144,000. Now here's something about George Romero you might not know. His first job in show business was working for Fred Rogers. You know, Mr. Rogers? Yeah, he worked on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He said that he so appreciated Fred Rogers because Fred Rogers was the first one who trusted him to shoot film for anything. Obviously, I guess this was before the days when they, would shoot in video, would shoot in film and then transfer it into a video format, and he worked for Fred Rogers. And actually, when he made Dawn of the Dead, he invited Mr. Rogers to watch it, which Fred did, and told him he found it very entertaining. Now, Fred Rogers was on hand to greet George Romero when he arrived in the afterlife, and of course he wished him well and said it was great to see him again as they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Fred also made a little inspirational speech, talked about how important it was for people to love one another. You know, the Mr. Rogers kind of thing. That guy is a saint to me. I mean, he's everything. He and Bob Ross, the painter guy, they're like what I wish I could be as a human being. They just seem so pure. Anyway, he was there, he made a little speech. The crowd seemed to really love it. Lots of applause. Lots of people dressed like zombies there to greet George Romero, which he seemed to appreciate a great deal. So he is now firmly ensconced in the next world, and I can't imagine it'll be too long before he finds himself a gig doing what he loves to do the most. Speaking of showbiz legends, Martin Landau, the actor, also transitioned to the afterlife over the past couple of days. If you're one of the older folk, you may remember him from the TV show Mission Impossible back in the 70s. I loved Mission Impossible. It was the only show that showed U.S. government-sanctioned overthrowings of democratically elected... I don't know if they were so democratically elected. It showed U.S. government-sponsored overthrows of foreign governments. Let's put it that way. Like every week, they were overthrowing a government in, Estovia or one of those made-up, Eastern European countries. And all the cars were checker cabs because they looked like Soviet bloc cars. And there would be rotating lights, danger lights that said GAZ underneath them, gas, because there was always poison gas and stuff going on. He was great in that, and he was also great as Bela Lugosi in the Ed Wood movie. If you haven't seen that, I really recommend that you watch that one. It's very, very funny. Here's a weird thing. Maybe you've heard this, maybe you haven't. Martin Landau turned down the role of Spock. Mr. Spock. Didn't want to do it. Probably didn't think it was going to help his career. Well, when he showed up in the next world, he walked out on stage, lots of applause, nice-sized crowd. Leonard Nimoy suddenly comes from backstage, kind of comes up behind him in full Spock regalia. This is what I've been told by my afterlife sources. Of course, I wasn't there. I trust these people, though, to tell me what's up. Nimoy came out in the full costume and proceeded to kind of razz him a little bit about that. Said, yeah, good thing you didn't take this part there, Marty. Would have really ruined your career. Crowd loved it, of course. course, as one would expect the crowd to. So he is now there. Maybe he can hook up with George Romero. Maybe they can get something going. Anyway, those two are now in the Afterlife. Both, I'm sure, will be working before we even know what hit us. All right, now we move on to some people we've been following for a while. You know, I assume, if you've been listening to this show for any period of time, that there is a movie being made by Stanley Kubrick inside iVironment, the giant indoor rain experience attraction that was built by Steve Jobs. It is currently run by Salvador Dali and Jean-Michel Basquiat, both of them artists. They started to make a crazy movie. We still don't know the name of it. We still don't know what the plot was supposed to be. They got in over their heads and they turned the reins over to Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick took it only on the grounds that he had total creative control, which they gave him, which they apparently have since come to regret. Because apparently whatever it was they had in mind, Kubrick is going in a different direction. And we don't even know what that direction is. He's brought in George C. Scott to play Salvador Dali. That's a strange casting. But even stranger than that, he's also brought in Peter Sellers, who's going to play Jean-Michel Basquiat. Now, Basquiat was like a mixed race guy, half black. Peter Sellers is British and was by no means mixed race. So God only knows what that is. Now, word I get from the set is that Sellers has been very silly as he's been playing Basquiat, and Kubrick apparently told him to kind of take it down a couple of notches because it was getting a lot of kind of ridiculous. Okay, Michael Jackson has offered to be, he wants to be in the movie. But the word is that Kubrick is leaning away from having him in the movie, even though Michael Jackson's face is the face on the giant Sphinx that Dali and Basquiat had built inside iVironment for this movie. It's a giant Sphinx, but it's made out of some kind of wiggly stuff. They say it's sort of like Jell-O. It looks like Jell-O. It wiggles. And it has Michael Jackson's face. So I'm assuming that's why Michael wanted to be in the movie, but Kubrick is rumored to be thinking he doesn't want to use him. So you be the one to tell Michael Jackson he can't be in a movie that has his face on a giant Sphinx. It's not something I'd want to do. Anyway. Oh. Weird thing. Dali is very upset because it's supposed to happen this week. His body is going to be exhumed here on the earthly plane because there's somebody who's claiming that he is their father, and I think it's a woman, and if that turned out to be true, she, of course, would inherit, a big part, if not all, of his estate. So Dali is going to be exhumed, and he's very upset about that. He's telling anybody who will listen that there's nothing he can do to stop it, of course, not being on the earthly plane, but he's very upset because he says they are tampering with his greatest work of art ever, which is himself. By digging him up, they're destroying his greatest work of art, is what he's saying. So he's not in a good mood already. And now he's PO'd about Kubrick taking the movie in an entirely different direction. So Dali is not a happy camper. And that's pretty much all we know about that at the moment. Speaking of people who aren't happy campers, Steve Jobs and Walt Disney are rumored to not be speaking to each other over creative differences. Both of them are denying the rumor to the press, to the Afterlife press, however. They both say everything's fine, they love and respect each other, everything is hunky-dory. Well, I have sources in positions to know better, and they're telling me that Jobs and Disney are really not getting along very well. These are two very, very strong-willed guys. They're not used to being, having to work with someone else on their own level. They're used to kind of snapping their fingers and people do what they say. Well, Disney wanted the place I'm referring to used to be called Trump City, and of course it's now called Mediopolis. They had a tiff over that name. Eventually Jobs prevailed, and it's still going to be called Mediopolis. Disney wanted it to be more of a theme park. Jobs wanted it to be strictly an R&D center. The way they work that out is Disney has the front half of the place where people will enter the town, and that will be a theme park called Disney's American Experience. It was going to be called Disney's American Experience at Mediopolis, but he's now dropped the Mediopolis part from it, so that tells you they're not, they've got problems. From what I'm told, Jobs is fine with that. Doesn't care what the hell he calls it, as long as Disney lets him have the back half of the property, which is going to be the R&D center. That's what Mediopolis was supposed to be, at least in Jobs' mind at first. So it sounds like they're not getting along, but as long as they keep things separate, it should work out. However, egos in the next world are pretty much just like egos are here. So I for one will not be surprised if, there's some trouble brewing between the two of them before too long. All right, I'm done. That's it. I'm going to lock up the Celebrity Afterlife Report studio for another week. I certainly hope you'll be here next week to join me again when I have another roundup of all the up-to-the-moment gossip about all your favorite deceased celebrities. In the meantime, if you're listening to this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, click on the little thumbs-uppy dealy. Wherever you're finding it, like it, share it, all that stuff. I appreciate that. You can find it on iTunes. You can find it in the Google Play Store. You can find it on YouTube. And you can find it on K-Chung, 1630 on your AM dial in Los Angeles, where it is played every Monday on the radio. Hey, thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. I'll hope to catch you next week. I am the Celebrity Medium. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Celebrity Afterlife Report podcast. To ask a question about your favorite deceased celebrity, call 818-3-MY-DREAM. 818-3-MY-DREAM. 818-369-3732.